Communications Coordinator with the American Numismatic Association, and I'm here today with Bob Evans, the SS Central America exhibit that we have at the World's Fair of Money here in Rosemont, Illinois at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center. Would you like to introduce yourself and
Sure.
talk a little bit about what we have here?
I'm Bob Evans. I'm the Chief Scientist and Historian of the SS Central America Project, and currently also the Scientist and Curator for California Gold Marketing Group, who is the owner of the materials you see on display here today. As a centerpiece of this exhibit, we have actually brought the multi-ton robot Nemo to show people what kind of equipment was used to pick up over 2 tons of gold. Over 7,500 gold coins and 532 gold bars back in 1988 through 1991. So this is 30-year-old technology, but it's hard to argue with the 2 tons of gold that it picked up. It's primitive in some ways by modern standards, just as sophisticated in other ways, but mostly what has changed over the years is computer technology. If you remember the computers of 1990, Nemo was based on computers similar to IBM ATs and 286s. Ancient history in the world of computers these days. But we have on display here tools, the manipulator, Nemo's video 3D eyes that we used in the control room in order to see the scene before us down there in 3 dimensions. The different arms and cameras and thrusters and tools that were used, and in all the different situations that we would encounter during the excavation of the shipwreck and the recovery of the treasure. The drawer is open right now. Nemo has 2 drawers, one in the back and one in the front, and they're both accessible because the base rotates. And so when we were up in the water column, we could just flip the other drawer around to the front and we could use whatever we had stored in that. Very, very versatile and options-oriented remotely operated vehicle, what are known as ROVs, remotely operated vehicles. We have a rake for exposing things at the bottom, although much more often we would simply use the thruster that's mounted on the left arm here to direct that toward things and blow on the sediment, thus dislodging it and exposing treasure that way. This manipulator got a lot of work. So Nemo's fingers the tools are specifically designed to be picked up by Nemo's fingers. You will see these little triangular handles that are on a lot of things. Those fit securely into the fingers so that we can use those tools in very delicate operations. These suction pickers here, also known as limpets, have a little vacuum line that runs down the middle, and you'll notice that's just about the size of a double eagle of a $20 gold piece. We use these to pick up an awful lot of $20 gold pieces, very gently. So it's an interesting concept that Nemo is such a big, heavy piece of equipment, capable of heavier excavation, but also capable of very, very delicate work.
And it has, the way that it looks today, is this essentially exactly what it looked like when
Essentially,
you were using it?
Nemo was constantly being modified according to the conditions we encountered and what we wanted to accomplish on a particular dive. In fact, its very design is based on having as many options as possible. Options were, it takes 2 hours to get to the seabed at the Central America site, 2 hours to come up. So you want to take with you what you're going to need on that dive. Remotely operated vehicle is the way to go because you actually don't have to worry about life support for a human being and a submersible. Who are restricted by both battery life and oxygen availability, for instance, and pressure and all sorts of other things. Nemo is a machine, and so of course we don't want any harm to befall it, but if Nemo was having a problem on the bottom, it wasn't a panic about somebody's going to die. We're going to bring the vehicle to the surface, we're going to fix it, and we're going to be back in the water as soon as we can. Because the name of the game is bottom time. How much time can you spend down there doing productive work? And Nemo had dives that lasted a little over 3 days. So this is not a 6-hour or 8-hour man-submersible dive. This is something that could just last and last, as long as we could feed power to it and as long as the equipment was working. One of the most unusual things that we were able to find during the SS Central America project was in recovering a couple of passenger trunks. We discovered that the clothing inside was remarkably well preserved. So from the 2 trunks we picked up, one in 1990 and one in 1991, they actually represent 3 survivors. There was a honeymooning couple, Ansel and Adeline Easton, and we have Ansel Easton's smoking jacket from his trunk. Here it has like sort of a floral design on it and these very fancy rope ties and such, but an amazing garment. Really takes you back to the age when you can see the clothing that these people actually wore. And, you know, fascinating stuff. I'm constantly amazed. The other trunk that we picked up, the one we picked up in 1991, belonged to a hardware merchant in Oregon City, Oregon, who obviously frequently came to San Francisco, down the coast of San Francisco. San Francisco was the commercial and social hub of the West Coast at that time. And this is a pair of heavy-duty miner's work pants, very much like today's Levi's, the 5-button fly. In fact, Levi Strauss was in business back in California at that time, shipping as much money on the Central America as banks. This company, Levi Strauss, was incredibly successful. If you consider that all of the other major shippers of gold on the Central America were banks, people that were actually involved in finance. And here is a company selling dry goods that is shipping $76,000 on the Central America when gold was $20 an ounce. So when you do that calculation, it's just, and it happened time after time. If you go through the records, you find out that Levi Strauss is always shipping tens of thousands of dollars on these U.S. mail ships. So talk about a successful business. Making pants for miners was immensely profitable. And this is the oldest known pair of heavy-duty miners' work pants, possibly made for and sold by Levi Strauss.
And this was in one of the
This was in
suitcases.
John DeMent's trunk, the hardware merchant from Oregon City, Oregon.
Right.
We don't know what he was doing in California at the time, but you know, he may have been going back east with some of his wealth. He was on board, and he was rescued by the bark Ellen in the middle of the night after the Central America sank, as was Ansel Easton. Adeline Easton, along with the other women and children, had been conveyed to a passing vessel, the Brig Marine, while the Central America was still on the surface. They launched their lifeboats and saved all the women and children. But both John DeMent and Ansel Easton were in the water after it sank and were rescued that night. Gold Rush jewelry. What were they wearing as adornment on themselves? One of the things that was immensely popular were stick pins and pin backs, brooches that they would wear in their clothing, made of actual California gold nuggets. These are nuggets from the gold rush that have been made into jewelry. They would take the golden quartz from the mother lode deposit and make it into a gemstone. And we have examples of that being used as a gemstone here, polished and such. We do have a Kellogg and Humbert gold ingot of almost exactly 1 kilogram in weight. It's 999.97 grams when you do the math. It is, however, on the ingot measured in troy ounces to the 100th of a troy ounce, and purity to the 1,000th. which renders it into a piece of money that was worth $586.17 back then. Now worth quite a bit more than that. But the Gold Rush jewelry, you can see all the different kinds of examples. There were 4 Italians on board. One of them probably received this Order of St. Maurice and St. Lazarus. It's a royally conferred medal and order. There's a diamond and gold brooch up here. So diamonds did make their way out to the West Coast to be put into jewelry by the jewelers out there. The regard ring is kind of fascinating. This was sort of a pre-engagement ring from a wealthy gentleman, probably to a wealthy young woman. The stones actually spell out ruby, emerald, garnet, amethyst, ruby, and diamond, the word regard. And it's a lovely little piece. This cabinet here is largely about the way they would move the gold. And so we have many small leather pokes that would be holding gold dust at the time. There's a saddle bag that some of those pokes were inside of. It's interesting to imagine a guy, actually packing this stuff out of and then getting on the ship and sealing up this saddlebag. It was wrapped with twine and wax sealed, so it couldn't be tampered with. But he had all this gold dust inside that sample bag that some mule had carried from the mines to San Francisco. We actually have a name on one of those, and we can track who this was and that he was on board. This L. Darcy or Dorsey. His name is on the leather of one of those. The gold room keys are quite amazing. They say Purser Hall, Central America on them, and they're enormous keys. But Wells Fargo and Company, everybody has heard of the name. It's iconic. It is it's very, very well-known name. The bank is still in business. But here is the box lid from a treasure box from 1857, Wells Fargo and Company, New York. So this was heading to New York. This was all part of their shipment to New York at the time, and they were the largest consigner of treasure on the Central America. This is the oldest known artifact like this, where you have an actual Wells Fargo box, a treasure chest, if you will, and we have the lid of it with a readable name on it.
Once again, I'm Amanda Miller, the Communications Coordinator for the American Numismatic Association, and we just got a quick tour of the SS Central America exhibit that's on display here at the World's Fair of Money. We are located at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois. Thank you, Bob Evans, for being willing to share some of these treasures with us. And if you can, come on down and see what's here. There's a lot of cool artifacts and even more to learn.